The Bering Sea was calm, flat, and still like a dirty mirror. The kind of day you could work the deck in a t-shirt. No building storm, no freak swells, just calm. The Jarl sailed out of Herendeen Bay through the passage at Port Moller into the open Bering Sea. No one ever heard from them again. No mayday, no wreckage, no bodies, no explanation. Just silence. The Bering Sea earned its reputation. For many years, crab fishing in the Bering Sea held the dubious title of the deadliest maritime occupation in the world. Not because of any television show, but because men died out there season after season, and the world barely noticed. Competition drove everything. It was a derby-style fishery. The season ran until the quota was caught, and then it was over. Every boat was racing against every other boat for the same crab. We fished through storms that should have driven us to shelter. We worked for days without sleep. We took risks that, in quieter moments, most of us knew were insane. Now our fishery is managed without the competition that literally worked us to death. But back in those days, new boats were arriving in Dutch Harbor every year, each one chasing the same quota. The competition got crazy, and into that world came some boats that had no business being there. The Jarl was one of them. The boat was old, vintage 1940s, and made of wood, maybe 90 to 100 feet long, narrow. It didn't start its life as a fishing boat. It looked like military surplus, something pressed into service long after its useful life had passed. It had a forward house, low sides. Just seeing the Jarl was concerning. There are plenty of old wood boats in Alaska, but they are typically small boats, fish in the summer and stay close to shore. The Jarl didn't belong here, not the Bering Sea, not in September, and not so far from shelter. The crew worked without the equipment the newer boats relied on. No deck crane, no dual-action pot launcher, no sorting table, no coiler, no bait chopper. Everything was done by hand, by the crew, by brute labor. Modern boats are built to be out there, engineered for the weight of the gear, the violence of the weather, the relentless work of a Bering Sea season. The Jarl was not. It was not a boat that could survive a Bering Sea winter, and it was fishing in a Bering Sea autumn. Too risky. My father was a ship's captain, a master mariner with an unlimited license. He could take any vessel of any size on any ocean in the world. He had sea time before and during World War II. He had owned and operated several wood-hulled fishing boats, just like the Jarl. He knew what those boats were and what they were not. He had been captain of the Jarl for some time the year before, and he did not trust that boat. Once the clamor of the Jarl's alarm sent him running to the engine room. A pipe had let go, and the engine room was flooding with seawater. My father did what the situation required. He dove into the oily bilge water, worked by feel in the dark to secure the valve to shut off the pipe. He kept the boat afloat. But that was also when he made his decision. He got off the Jarl as soon as he could. He said it was only a matter of time. The Northern Shell was a processing barge anchored in Herendeen Bay on the Bering Sea side of Univac Island. Boats would come in from the fishing grounds, offload their crab, and head back out. It was a brief stop in a season that didn't offer many. That fall, 1973, both the Jarl and the Paragon were working those waters in fairly close proximity. The Paragon, my boat, was the newest crab boat in the Bering Sea, 110 feet of crab-catching steel machine, powered by a Cat 399 diesel engine, 1,125 horsepower, turning a 75-inch diameter propeller. It had a 12-ton rowed deck crane, the latest electronics, and accommodations that were, by the standards of the day, very comfortable. It was built for exactly what it was doing. I was the engineer. When we got to the northern shell, the Jarl was tied alongside it, offloading crab, so we tied up behind them. We knew the crew of the Jarl. They were all friends. They were, all of them, just really nice people. Friendly and intelligent, easy to talk to. The kind of people you immediately are happy to know. We sat in the galley of the northern shell and talked the way fishermen talk about boats and seasons, about weather and gear, about where they'd come from and what they were looking forward to. Some of them talked about school, about plans for after the season. There was an easy bond between our two crews, the kind that forms quickly among people doing hard work in hard places, the kind that forms from shared experience and lasts long after the names are forgotten. When the Jarl finished offloading, I walked with the crew to the side of the barge. The Jarl's old diesel engine clanked and clattered to life, sending a black belch of exhaust into the cold air. We threw their lines. The Jarl pulled away from the northern shell and moved out into Herendeen Bay. I stood at the rail and watched them go. I waved goodbye. They sailed across the flat water of Herendeen Bay, through Port Moller and out into the Bering Sea. I never saw them again. No one ever saw them again. No mayday, no emergency call, no signal flare, no reports of a boat in trouble, nothing on the radio, not a word, not a single broken transmission. September 16th, 1973, a beautiful day, calm, flat water. What happened to the Jarl is unknown. It might have been a catastrophic failure of the integrity of the hull. It may have struck a log or some other obstacle. Rare for the Bering Sea, but not unknown. A few broken hull planks in a critical spot could cause rapid, catastrophic flooding with a quick capsize. The scene may have been so chaotic that a radio call is impossible. Silence was all that was left of the Jarl, the silence that says, "We are lost." I know what it feels like when the Bering Sea tries to swallow your boat. The Jarl had been gone for over a week. Nearing the end of our trip, with crab in each of our 3 holds, we were running in a following sea of tall, steep waves. In a following sea, the boat travels the same direction as the waves. A problem with the steering caused the boat to suddenly veer hard to port at full speed. Heavy seas filled and captured the stern, and the boat floundered. With no time to dress, my father raced to the engine room, slipping on the steel ladder and landing bruised and bloodied on the bilge pumps in the engine room below. Pitched suddenly from the sweet slumber into pandemonium, I followed with a bit more grace. We started pumps, and eventually the sea released its grip. The boat stabilized, and the stern slowly surfaced. The Jarl's crew had no such margin. The sea simply took them, on the calmest of days, and left no trace of what it had done. After the Jarl disappeared, I was still out there, still fishing. That is what you did. The season didn't stop. These men had families, conversations they were planning to have, things they were looking forward to, people who were waiting for them. Standing on the deck of that barge, none of us knew it was the last time. We said goodbye the way you say goodbye when you expect to see someone again. I've thought about that day for over 50 years. The Jarl was a piece of junk, no tears over losing that. But the crew, my brave, amazing friends, were priceless. The Bering Sea steals lives. The water rises in fury, claims its victims, and closes over without a trace. I waved the last goodbye to my friends of the Jarl, just hours before the sea snatched them from its surface. And I have carried that wave with me ever since.